This is the Dual1218 turntable, and we will have a look inside underneath it, but before we do that, let's have a look from the outside. It's a reasonably basic early 70s dual turntable. It has a very interesting lid, which I'll show you, which flaps up like this and slides back, which allows you to do the basic operations of switching on, switching off, and I guess you could lift the record out from there, a little bit tight. But if you slide the lid all the way back, like that, a little bit stiff, you can then lift the lid like that, so that you can then get to the turntable. I love these innovations of hi-fi all these years ago, really fascinating. So under the lid we have a cartridge holder. I've taken the cartridge out already. In order to look underneath the turntable, we'll remove some of the bits as we go that might get damaged in turning over the turntable. So the first is the cartridge lid, or the cartridge holder, which you push the lever back and then it just slides out like that, so you can put that to one side. At the back we have the counterweight, and most early dual turntables you can just turn a knob there and remove that, which is a good thing to do because that means that you're not putting a strain onto the arm, the tone arm, when you turn it over. Here's the platter, and in order to remove the platter we'll take out each of the little center pieces. The rubber is loose, so that could just come off. Put that to one side, and then the platter usually lifts off. Sometimes there's a little clip at the top of the center pin here that will hold it in. I've taken that clip off so that it's easier to remove. Remove the platter. And you can see what's underneath. So the main part underneath is these pieces. This is called the idler wheel, and this rotates as it's pushed round from this brass piece here, which is the motor spindle. And you can see there's a gradation on the spindle, and that allows it to run at different speeds. And if I move the speed knob at the front here, it moves the idler up and down, which will press against either the lower, the middle or the upper piece of the spindle of the motor. And then the outside edge of this pushes on the inside edge of the turntable platter. One thing that makes these a bit more complicated to work out and to fix or find the problems is that all of the controls for the arm and the start and the stop process are all mechanical underneath, and they're driven by the turntable platter going round. And underneath here you can see at the bottom down here there are cogs, and those cogs are turned by the underside of the platter as it goes round. So this is the underside of the platter, and that cog turns a huge cog mechanism there, which triggers all of the different mechanisms that cause the arm to go onto the edge of the record, or to return when you press the stop button, or when it gets to the center of the record. At the back here we also have this, which is for records, particularly singles that don't have the centerpiece in them. A nice little brush as well. So I think that's the main parts of the upper part of the turntable. Now we'll turn it over and we'll have a look underneath. In order to turn it over, we have these screws. There's one at the front and one at the back. Again, very common on older turntables. These screws have a number of different functions. The first is that when they're screwed down like this, they allow the turntable to sit on its springs, on its mount, and vibrate. If you're going to transport the turntable, you pull the screw up as hard as you can and turn it, and that will then lock the turntable in place and hold the turntable down, which means that it can move, you can transport it and it won't shake around when it's being transported. And then the third is if you leave it loose like this, and we'll do the same with the rear one, leave it loose, you can then lift the turntable at the front, and you can see under there you can clip this forward and it allows you to release the front of the turntable so that you can lift it out and turn it over. Okay, so now we've turned the turntable over, we'll have a look and see what's underneath. On the power side, the power cable comes in through here, this connector, in fact this one on here is broken. These two are your live feed, and this is the earth that usually goes to an earth on the back of the amplifier. And that sits inside this housing, which we'll remove. Under here is a smoothing capacitor, and the wires for the motor are off here. It looks like there are 4 wires here so that it can run off multiple voltages. And this piece at the front here is the on-off switch, which is driven by this lever, which we'll come to in a minute. And that switches the motor on and off. And then this is the motor, which goes through, as I said before, to the motor spindle, which then goes to the idler wheel, which is that rubber wheel we were looking at, which then drives the outside of the platter. What else do we have here? So the feed of the signal comes from the stylus into the cartridge and along these little green wires here that go into this box, and they similarly are switched on and off by this, which we'll come on to in a minute, and that then runs out through these cables out to the amplifier. In the middle here, the bright orange is the central driver, if you like. That was the cog that we were looking at from the other side of the turntable that's driven as the platter goes round. And multiple turns of the platter, because the cog is so small, create an overall turn of this big wheel. And it has all sorts of slots that you can see here, and troughs and dips in the outside edge. And if we look over here, it's kind of various holes and slots, and all of those drive different parts of the process, or of the process of turning the arm, lowering the arm, returning the arm when it meets the center of the record, or if you press the stop button. And so, for example, once this starts to turn, because you've turned the motor on, which we'll come to in a minute, and once you've turned the motor on, the turntable or the platter starts to turn, that will start to turn this yellow cog, and that in turn will move these levers here outwards, and when they come out they create a connection to the other metal pieces in the center there, which then allow the signal from the stylus to be switched on and come out through the cable. This corner here is where the arm is situated. So the cable, as we said, the cable for the stylus comes out through here, and the little pieces under here, this allows the arm press to push up and down, which raises and lowers the arm onto needle onto the record. And here we have a cam. This is for tracking, and as you turn that moves this and these springs, and thereby changes the force that's pulling outward on the arm to create a tracking force. At the front end here we have this piece, so this is connected to the record size selector. You can see as you turn it, it changes and moves this long bar, which in turn changes the size of the record as recognised by where it drops the needle. And then this piece here, this section here, is the main control, the on-off control, and as you rotate this, it causes movement and things to switch here, which in turn switch on the platter through the motor and get this yellow cog to turn, which then controls the timing of all of the other different functions to move the record around and play the album or the single. The problem with these is that there are plastic parts like this that are now old and they tend to crack. Another one here that might crack at some point. So I found that in some turntables. The other is that the grease gets very old and sticky, and the oil gets very old and sticky, and that can just stop things from turning. With this one, you can see the screw is a little bit bitten there. This post here, which should rotate nicely, which it does now. As you can see, that rotates back and forwards nicely now. That was completely gummed up and completely solid, and so the whole assembly had to be removed in order to sort it out and get it working again. I think that's it from under here for now. So now we're ready to play some music. Not many of the dual turntables of this age have real wood veneers, which this one does, and it's in great condition. We'll be playing some jazz this evening, used with the CR230 receiver, which is of a similar era to the turntable.